3 days of long lines, fights, tight quarters during a pandemic, and Oregon is already out of the $500 stimulus checks.
I feel helpless because I can't help myself.
She never got one, and she thinks the entire process put her and others in danger.
Close it down, figure out something else.
And speaking of the pandemic, a viewer wants to know when they should start worrying about the flu, too, as if we don't have enough to worry about. And we've seen lots of stories about tourists trashing Oregon beaches. So we're going to saunter down into the KGW vault for a reminder of why they're so special.
Oregon's coastline will remain secure for generations to come.
Here's the story.
Back in the Portland groove. I'm back. Hey, hi. What a day to come back. It's a Friday. I'm Dan Haggerty. I was gone for a while. What'd I miss? Okay, who had 58 seconds for the first dad joke? If you did, you, my friend, are a winner. See, Maggie doesn't do dad jokes. One, because she isn't a dad. And two, she has self-respect. Welcome to the story. Thank you to Maggie Vespa for holding it down while I was away. We're going to hear from her in just a few minutes, so all the Maggie fans, stick around. We're going to have Maggie coming up soon. In the meantime, I want to hear from you. Email us at thestory@kgw.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. As always, use Twitter and the hashtag #HeyDan. All right, let's get started. And what a better place to start than the big story? Well, start big, which is something that a lot of people have been writing in about. It's those short-lived $500 checks that the state was handing out. Well, first and foremost, you should know, they're gone. Yeah, already. They started handing them out on Wednesday. They had enough for 70,000 people, and today, poof, bye-bye, all gone, no more. But not before 3 days of this. Lines of upwards of 200 people outside of banks and credit unions. And these are people desperate for money right now. People willing to risk a pandemic, to wait in line for upwards of 5 hours. This is such stressful stuff for people. I mean, look, fights were breaking out in those lines in some cases, all for $500, which is enough to pay a few bills, and it's life-saving money right now for some people. Officials with the state said 62% of that money went to people outside of the Portland metro area. Still, the whole process struck a lot of people as not being very well thought out, or even in some cases being unfair. A viewer named Kelly tweeted us this, saying, "Whoever decided that the $500 was offered first come, first serve has neglected people who have access issues, disability, transportation, caregivers, etc." Thank you for writing that in, Kelly. And something tells me that this woman you see here would agree with you. That is Cindy Barber. She's been fighting lupus since 1997. That means that she is immunocompromised. In other words, not somebody who should be spending time in close quarters with other people during a deadly pandemic. But she needed the money, so she stood in line outside of 2 separate on-point credit unions. She waited and she waited and she risked her health, but the money ran out and she got nothing. And yes, she did try to apply online, but says that didn't work for her either.
It's everything to me. It's my energy bill. It's my rent. I've reached out to all my state legislators, Speaker of the House, President of the Senate. Can't get through to anybody. Nobody's returning calls. There isn't somebody that I can reach out to, which means nobody else. If I have the wherewithal to figure out who to call for helpline, I know that there are at least 90% below me that don't even have the knowledge to reach out to a lifeline as our legislators.
How obvious is the desperation in her voice there? I mean, she knew the risks. She went anyway, and she's not really sure if she made the right call or not in doing that. She's also not convinced if the banks and the credit unions were prepared enough to keep that many people safe.
I'm not sure what their definition of safe is, but bringing out pens that then turn into community pens to fill out the forms that you're need to fill out, that does not seem safe. Does not seem safe to me that you don't even hire a guard to remind people to socially distance. Now, there's going to be Karens out there, and there's going to, I don't know if that would inflame it, but when you see a bunch of hundreds of people, close it down, figure out something else. This isn't working. It's not worth infecting all of these people.
Close it down. This isn't working. Well, obviously there's no need to do that right now because the money's gone. It's all dried up, leaving people like Cindy waiting for the next batch of assistance. Whenever that might happen, we don't know right now. The two people who spearheaded this program held a press conference today. Oregon Senate President Peter Courtney and Oregon House Speaker Tina Kotek. I asked both of them about those safety concerns. Speaker Kotek gave me a pretty predictable answer, I would say, about branches doing their best and the state reacting the best way that they can. Senator Courtney, though, well, let's just say he didn't play it as safe.
I'm sorry, Dan. This was not a PhD dissertation situation at all. It just wasn't. It was that simple and that daring and that risk-taking. We didn't do it to show off. We had reached the point, enough is enough, we're going to do something. FDR once said, when he was in the middle of the mess he was, unemployment, et cetera, he said, just do something, even if it's wrong. Now, I got to be careful here, but I'll leave you with that thought. You reach the point in these kind of situations and our kind of positions that talk, meet with. And meanwhile, day follows night, night follows day. And by the way, the person who couldn't pay their rent today can't pay it tomorrow night. When are you going to finally do something? So I mean that, Dan. It's very important to understand. We did not hold a summit meeting. We did not get together. We didn't do that. And it's not that we didn't care about the virus. We surely did. It's just that we felt the pain was so bad and people's loss of respect was so bad that we had to do what we did the way we did it.
I also asked how much money would have met the demand since that $35 million ran out relatively quickly. Speaker Kotek said a realistic figure is probably in the range of hundreds of millions of dollars.
So, if you were hoping to get that $500 boost during the pandemic, you missed your chance. But it kind of feels like this plan came out of nowhere and ended just as fast. So, how did we get here? We have to go back to mid-July during the Oregon legislature's second special session. The first was to pass police reforms at the height of the George Floyd racial justice protests. The second session was held to tackle the budget and pandemic assistance. This was also when the employment department was like slow as molasses. Remember that, it's important to the story. So in mid-July, led by House Speaker Tina Kotek and Senate President Peter Courtney, Oregon lawmakers agreed to use $35 million of their federal CARES Act dollars to give out $500 checks to 70,000 Oregonians still unemployed due to COVID-19. $35 million divided by 70,000 equals 500, so that checks out. But leaders wanted the money out fast, so banks and credit unions were tasked with handing it out to avoid bureaucratic slowdowns. Peter Courtney said that's the exact thing we're trying to fight against with this program. And Speaker Kotek said we're doing this very much on warp speed for state government. And then on Wednesday, the participating banks and credit unions started handing out the money, which led to the long lines and long wait times and even some fights. And now, less than 2 days later, it's all gone. And that's how we got here.
So if that's how we got here, where are we going? What's next? Will there be more government assistance? So in Oregon, the answer is a big fat maybe. A viewer named Jeff wrote to ask, when will Oregon be applying to the federal government for the $300 unemployment assistance? All right, first of all, I know this can get a little confusing with all these different dollar amounts. We were talking about $500 up to this point. Now we're talking about $300. What's going on? So there is so much happening. I will forgive you entirely if you didn't realize that President Trump signed an executive order earlier this month approving extra unemployment benefits. This was to make up for the fact that that extra $600 a week in unemployment from the CARES Act expired at the end of July. Congress still hasn't passed an extension, but the president took unilateral action and got this done. Now, the executive order actually calls for $400 payments, not $300, like Jeff said in the question there. But in order for the states to take advantage of the funds, they need to be able to cover a quarter of the payment, or $100. So the feds are willing to pay the $300 if the states can get $100, reaching that $400 total. But $100 times, I don't know, everybody on unemployment adds up really quickly, like billions of dollars. And Oregon, frankly, isn't quite sure if they can afford it. So it has yet to decide at this point if they want to take advantage. Washington and Idaho have. If Oregon gets on board, we'll let you know. All right, let's talk about a group of people not really known for making a lot of noise. In fact, quite the opposite. But they are making some now. Librarians are speaking up, loudly, in fact, because Multnomah County is planning on laying off dozens of them. Directors say in light of the pandemic, they have no choice. But a couple of librarians told Maggie Vespa they think they do.
Librarians aren't normally prone to speaking up. Then again, not much is normal about 2020. So here we are.
What is your employment status currently with Multnomah County Library?
As you'll see,
currently still employed, so fingers crossed.
They have their reasons.
So yes, I have received my layoff notice. I am impacted by the layoffs. My job has been eliminated.
Kyra Hahn and Eliana Budd put their names and their faces on camera because they're worried both for their jobs and their community. Months after COVID-19 forced Multnomah County to close its libraries, management has announced layoffs. The latest estimate, 79 full-time staff members, with 6 more likely moved to a part-time status. We're told that number is fluid.
It's kind of heartbreaking, actually, and a lot of my peers are upset.
It's not a funding issue necessarily. The library's revenue comes largely from property taxes, which are relatively stable. The director says they just can't justify keeping the standard number of people on their publicly funded payroll, especially when libraries remain closed and services, as a result, remain hindered. That, according to Director Vayli Elke, who's worked with Multnomah County Library for 23 years.
I started as a youth librarian, and there are people who will be impacted by this with whom I've worked for that 23 years, and personally it is very hard.
Elke says the library worked with the union representing staff, AFSCME Local 88, in negotiating the layoffs. That process included, she said, calculating how libraries can eventually reopen with social distancing in mind and moving as many jobs and services as possible online, something employees argue can be done more.
There is a lot of work to be done, and many ideas that have been sent in by staff since mid-March that we could be acting upon.
Management's response?
It's not as simple as just having an idea one day and the next day enacting it. You know, oftentimes there are lots of things that need to be in place to make that happen. IT things and facilities things and all of that stuff. So we actually, at the union's request, formed a task force that did a lot of that vetting of all of those suggestions. And
another concern Elke is well aware of, services for people of color. Things like providing culturally specific books, internet access to those without, and help with homework and resumes. Elke says those programs will be protected. Staff worry the way things are shaping up, it's not possible.
Folks who don't have that constant or regular access to things are once again going to be disenfranchised and put, you know, in a spot where I don't know where I can go to get computer lab help. I don't know where I can go to print out paperwork. I don't know where I can go to do these basic things.
Library officials plan to have the list of layoffs finalized by September 30th.
Okay, Maggie Vespa joining us now. Maggie, I want to talk a bit about one of those last points you made when it comes to the possibility that the culturally specific programs could go away. What are the employees saying that makes them so sure that those are at risk?
Yeah, they're really worried about those because basically they say a lot of the people who really depend on local libraries are people of color, because we know, you know, based on these conversations that we're all having as a society, that people of color are more likely to lack access to internet. Children and students of color are more likely to be going to schools that are underfunded. Parents of color are more likely to be working multiple jobs, and local libraries basically help fill that gap, so they know that their services are very important for Multnomah County's communities of color. And then I also want to point out both of the employees that we talked to hold the title of Black Cultural Library Advocate, meaning they help choose books and materials that are sort of tied to the Black community and really resonate with the Black community. And then also Kyra was, she says, the Albina branch's first Black librarian, and she was the one who was laid off in our story. So basically they just know how important the libraries are to our local Black community here, and they're just worried about an impact on the services and also just those relationships that they fear might be lost or damaged because of this. So that was their take.
Got it. Maggie, thank you.
Oregonians can take a great deal of personal pride in this bill.
A reminder in the KGW Vault of why Oregon's coasts are so special and why we should stop treating them like this. And a viewer has a question about a virus. No, not that one. Another virus. When the story continues.
Hey, welcome back to The Story. It is good to be back reading your comments again and questions and feedback. That is what the hashtag HeyDan is for. We're going to be reading what you have to say, helping us to shape the coverage based on what you want to see us do. Even answering some of your questions directly. In fact, we're going to do a bunch of that right now. Connie Woodworth emailed us and asked a three-part question. Hey, Dan, when should I get my seasonal flu shot this year? If I get it as early as possible, will it strongly protect me throughout the flu season? And what is the impact on this vaccination when I'm able to get the COVID-19 vaccination? All great questions, things we should be thinking about right now, Connie, so thank you. It's more important than ever to get that flu vaccine to protect yourself. Many doctors recommend getting your flu shot as soon as possible. Some pharmacies have actually already started to give them now, so you could literally go right after the show if you wanted to and go get your flu shot. This is the best option, they say, for most younger, healthy people. Some doctors recommend that older patients or people who are immunocompromised wait a little bit until like September or even October so that your flu shot lasts a little longer into the flu season. Doctors say that the vaccine lasts about 6 months at full strength. As far as the flu vaccine and COVID-19, scientists stress that the flu shot will not prevent COVID-19, okay? The coronavirus vaccine will be a totally separate individual thing, you know, if we ever get one. Fingers crossed. All right, different topic now, mail-in voting. Nothing big happened with that while I was gone, right? I'm not sure. I was kind of cut up. I'm sure it was nothing. But let's go to Richard Lewis's question here. He wanted to know what percentage of mail-in ballots actually go through the mail system. Now, just to clarify, all of Oregon's ballots go through the mail system at one point, right, when they're delivered to you. Voters are sending them, when they send them back, that's kind of a different story. So in the May primary, here are the numbers. It was about 50-50. Just over half of Oregon ballots were returned by mail. That was actually a pretty big jump from past elections, where the statewide average was more like 35% returned by mail. Maybe it was the pandemic with more people staying at home, not quite sure. But this was also the first election where Oregon's ballot return envelopes had prepaid postage. Now, one of the stories that we covered while I was gone had to do with all the trash that was at the Oregon coast. Apparently, the summer heat was just a little too tempting for those of us who live east of the beaches. So we saw a lot of crowds, and then we saw a lot of this. Unfortunately, people leaving trash behind. Kind of got us thinking back on the history of Oregon's beaches and why they're so special. I mean, aside from the obvious. And the KGW Vault explains why. In 1966, a motel owner in Cannon Beach was trying to reserve some stretch of the beach there for private use. A lot of people complained about it, and the legislature tried to pass a bill making the land public. Conservatives in the legislature were worried at the time that this would be a threat to private property rights. But on May 13th, 1967, Governor Tom McCall staged this dramatic visit to the coast. He flew 2 helicopters in, brought in a bunch of surveyors and scientists, and all the news coverage and everything that spurred from this helped turn the public opinion. And that same year, Governor McCall signed the Oregon Beach Bill, guaranteeing public ownership.
One of the most far-reaching measures of its kind ever enacted anywhere in the nation. This bill guarantees that Oregon's coastline will remain secure for generations to come. And in so doing, it will enable Oregon to meet its burgeoning needs for recreation far into the future. Oregonians can take a great deal of personal pride in this bill. Its enactment was the product of a groundswell of public support that arose from every quarter of the state, a groundswell that in my experience was of unprecedented intensity. And then the news media. They deserve to be singled out and commended on their efforts in focusing public's attention on this vital concern. I would say that without the intense attention of the press and the electronic press, House Bill 1601 may have died an ignominious death in committee. Far from being a partisan product, the passage of this bill reflects the cooperative efforts of Republicans and Democrats and an impressive array of scientists and technicians from throughout the state. The overriding consideration, though, of all concerned was that Oregon's beaches be preserved and protected for posterity, and under this bill, they will be.
Don't you miss bipartisanship? Wasn't that nice? Now, the bill turned Oregon into a national leader in protecting its coastline. So the least we can do is pick up after ourselves. because after all, the beach does really belong to all of us. Now, if you want us to try and find something for you down in that KGW vault, reach out, use the hashtag HeyDan. We'll go down there, we'll look around for you. All right, now tell me if you've heard this one before. A Milwaukee Arts Committee had a big plan for a music festival this year, but something got in the way. But John Goodwin learned how organizers kept the music from falling flat.
Not to sound like a broken record, but COVID-19 has changed just about everything.
Before the pandemic, we were planning to do an event where we would maybe like close down a block of a street and have a big band and have a festival all day and have food carts and stuff. And it became pretty clear that that wasn't going to be able to happen.
Samantha Swindler is a member of the Milwaukee Arts Committee and also a videographer at the Oregonian. The idea for an inaugural music festival fell through, and settling for something virtual just wouldn't cut it.
Porch Fest Milwaukee 2020 is a decentralized event where we are basically just inviting people to perform on their own porches.
For the next 4 Fridays, starting tonight from 7 to 8 p.m., you can sign up to perform from the comfort of your front porch.
There really is no criteria to sign up for Porch Fest. We have like a heavy metal rock band, we have a bagpiper, we have literal show tunes.
There are 17 performers signed up tonight. You can find out where they are on this map at milwaukeeoregon.gov. Local songwriter Joe Carey New will be one of them.
I'm just going to use a little old Fender PA that I've had kicking around for a long time. I don't think it's not going to be Metallica or anything like that. You know, I know people, especially if they're housebound and barn sour, you know, they probably want to get out and shake a tail feather.
Because we definitely want to, you know, make sure people are socially distanced and not forming large crowds. But the response was overwhelmingly positive, both from people in the community, but also people who've been cooped up for months.
Joe has had many songs covered over the years by artists you might know.
John Mellencamp, Lee Von Helm, new writers of the Purple Sage, Del McCoury, 4 songs with him.
And if you don't live in Milwaukee, yes, they will be live streaming from one porch each week. Samantha hopes that Porch Fest will return next year with maybe a little less distance and a lot more gathering.
I don't know what it will look like next year, but maybe this format is what everybody was wanting anyway. So maybe we'll just keep it the same.
John Goodwin, KGW News.
All right, it's almost the end of the story. It's almost the end of the week. You know what that means. Get out your phone, use that hashtag HeyDan, leave us some feedback, ask us a question. Lots of stuff to talk about after today's show. We're going to finish up the story next. A lot of feedback tonight. It's usually because sometimes it can be slow on a Friday, not tonight. Most of you probably know if you watch regularly, I was off for like more than a week and I completely disconnected from all social media and emails and literally everything. And I think it served its purpose because I was a little high strung toward the end there and I was looking to chill out and I did, and I missed this little back and forth. So it was nice to see everything coming in. Let's read a few right now. This one is from Lud Luring. He said, this show was actually pretty decent this week, up until today. Hashtag HeyDan. At least you used that. Thank you. And then Harriet wrote, you're back. Your hair is weird today. Grow it more. I missed you guys too. I'll see you Monday.